So basically, I apologize for the bit of a delay I've had as far as not having any videos since Monday. Just been getting used to it. I got my desktop computer down here, so it's been a bit easier and a bit faster because internet's really slow, and uploading it on my already kind of crappy laptop and over Wi-Fi made things a bit difficult, but I've been able to kind of speed things up, and now we have a lot to talk about. So basically, I'll go back to what I initially wanted to talk about, which was Manny Ramirez and Kevin Youkilis being hired as special consultants, assistant hitting coach. So that's a really good move. It's Steve Epstein and Jed Hoyer going back to people that they used to win those 2 titles in Boston. And now those are guys that have that experience, that know what it's like to be there, that know what it's like to, start all the way from the bottom and try and work your way up to become a championship caliber team. Those are the types of guys who really are not that long removed from playing baseball to where they understand the current culture of the game and can really help the Cubs adjust themselves to become contenders. There's a lot of things going on right now, and it makes me think, how are the Cubs going to start the season? What are the moves that have to be made? And really everything that revolves around that, because they're looking at a variety of things that the Cubs are having to address right off the bat. As I mentioned in the previous video, Javier Baez came in and he was a lot slimmer. He lost around 15 pounds, still struggling with strikeouts, and we have to understand that that's an inherent problem that we have with Javier Baez. But on a team like this, on a team that can be so outrageously talented, if Javier Baez plays Mark Reynolds his whole career, he'll be extremely valuable. It's just making sure that everybody else works out, and it's just tough to rely on scenarios like that. So, that's why I think at 22 years old, and especially with someone with that kind of raw talent, it's a little tough. There have been other things going on that kind of point to some interesting details. Chris Bryant's been working out in the outfield. I don't know if I mentioned it in any of my videos last year, but that's something that I've always expected Chris Bryant to be an outfielder. I've expected that since the day he was drafted, because I thought that the infield was just too crowded. Now, him working out in the outfield is probably bad news for Chris Coghlan, because Dexter Fowler's locked down the center field spot. Jorge Soler's in right field. Does this push Chris Coghlan to the bench eventually? Because this is where Chris Bryant's finally starting to get some time in the outfield. He's getting used to what that's like, because that may very well be the future of his position, and the future of his MLB career. To replace him at third base, you still have Mike Olt working out, a guy that's outrageously talented, but he needs to work on his contact issues, and he's also 26. So there's not that level of patience that you have with Javier Baez because he's 4 years older. But on the other hand, you're also dealing with Tommy La Stella, your acquisition you got in the Arodys Vizcaino trade. You have him working third base. He's already versatile enough to where he's working second. He's worked short in the past. It's really good to have a guy that's like that replaces Luis Valbuena almost directly, and arguably a guy with more potential than Luis Valbuena. And if Tommy La Stella becomes a bench player, maybe starts at third at the beginning of the year, you keep Bryant down for service time and stuff like that, that really doesn't matter as long as you're building guys that can be valuable to the team, and that's really the most important thing. Some quasi-optimistic / good-looking news, but it's kind of bad to say it that way. The Cubs may not have to face Adam Wainwright April 5th. A lot of news going on that Adam Wainwright will not be able to pitch at the beginning of spring because of an abdominal strain. He's been being checked out. Hopefully it all works out to his favor, and hopefully it's nothing serious. But he may miss his April 5th start if his recovery doesn't move as it's expected. He's supposed to get in a few starts at the end of spring training, but it's a bit of a slow start to his season. And slow starts really mean nothing. Jake Arrieta didn't play for the first month of last year, and he ended up becoming the Cubs' most valuable pitcher and really emerged as one of the best pitchers in the National League. I saw a picture, I think yesterday, of John Lester pitching in a Cubs uniform. It was like the coolest thing in the world. Because that was a fantasy for the longest time, and now that it's actually a reality going into this season, it's really cool to be able to take a look at that. Other than that, just really nothing else that big. March 5th is the Cubs' first spring training game. That's when I'll be back for daily videos. Might dress up just because I'll be excited for spring training. I'm more excited for baseball than really anybody else in the world right now. I'm in front of a bunch of Cardinals fans down here. and that same kind of excitement just doesn't radiate for them. Maybe it's because they're used to winning, unlike here, but this is finally the year where they're starting to see a team that has potential, a team that can get into the playoffs. Things are going to have to work out for them, and they're in arguably the best division in baseball. You know, they're going to face challenges from all four of those teams. Cincinnati's still going to have Devin Mesoraco in their lineup. They're still going to have the speedy Billy Hamilton. They'll still have Jay Bruce. They'll still have Joey Votto. They'll still have Brandon Phillips. Those things won't change. They're still going to have Aroldis Chapman and Jonathan Broxton in their bullpen. You know, the Cubs did a pretty good job of hitting Sam LeCure last year and a few other guys in that Reds bullpen, but you know, if Cincinnati's de facto going into the season as being the worst team of the division, you're still going to face challenges going from the Cincinnati Reds. Then you have the Milwaukee Brewers. Interesting news came out the other day on that subject that Aramis Ramirez announced that he will retire after this year. I know a lot of Cubs fans don't really like Aramis Ramirez. I was always a big fan. He was a guy, obviously he didn't show up in the playoffs when we had him, but he was somebody that really energized Wrigley Field for the very long time that he was here, from 2003 to 2011. Aramis Ramirez was the best player on the north side and a guy that I personally loved watching, and he's been a consistently great player his whole career, and there's something to be said for that for sure. But on the note of the Brewers, they're going to have him coming back. You still have Carlos Gomez, one of the best players in Major League Baseball. So the Brewers aren't going to be easy to beat. And then you have Pittsburgh and St. Louis. I'd argue Pittsburgh, if the Cubs aren't the front runner for the NL Central, I'd say it's Pittsburgh. They look great, and they're always going to be a tough team to play. But I think you could probably judge the Cubs season on how they come out of the gate. If they're going to come out flying, and if they're going to be 500 or above in April, I think you'll be okay, because then you're going to start adding Chris Bryant. You know, mid-season, you're going to be buyers. Hopefully, you're going to add Addison Russell at some point. This team's going to be dangerous, and at least from the offensive standpoint, this is a team that can really go places, and me personally, I'm really excited to see it. This week has been pretty progressive. You know, Joe Madden has been getting this team going. Everybody's working out. Everybody's motivated to do well. There's nothing I love seeing more. We have hope from Clark and Addison. I'll be back for a few videos next week. March 5th until the end of the year, I should be doing daily videos. Other than that, good evening, and subscribe and like the page.